George R.R. Martin, the writer and man behind this beloved franchise, over the years has searched for the right gaming developer to bring his vision alive. In 2012, Cyanide gave it a try, creating an action role-playing game that took place concurrently with Season 1 of HBO's Game of Thrones, and unfortunately, while they crafted a decent story, the rest of the game just felt, in my opinion, low quality. The digital fix summed it up pretty well, saying quote-unquote, "By hook or by crook, Cyanide managed to win this license before it hit the big time with HBO, and it's difficult to believe that they would be given the opportunity to create Westeros now that it is so much more well known. A serviceable game with blood spurts and political machinations would have sufficed in a first step, allowing them time to bed in and get to know the nuances of third-person combat. Instead, apart from the story, there is a general feeling of detachment from the game and its main gameplay elements, giving rise to the notion that most who play it will do so only to find out how the Tales of Moors and Alistair twist and turn on their way to conclusion." Seemingly, George R.R. Martin must have been unhappy with the reception as well, because in 2013, Telltale Games and Martin agreed to make a Game of Thrones title. This game was very different compared to Cyanide's attempt, as instead of it being an RPG, Telltale's was a point-and-click graphic adventure game, which pretty much solely relied on a great story with twists in it. Although, like Cyanide's game, this takes place concurrently with the HBO television series, but this time from the end of the 3rd season until just prior to the start of the 5th season. Martin specifically mentioned that he wanted a Game of Thrones game to be made by a studio that knows how to create a thrilling and interesting story. Telltale's Game of Thrones Season 1 proved to be a solid experience, but still was met with a mixed response. Even though Telltale's Game of Thrones Season 2 is happening, I think this franchise is missing its potential, and it honestly deserves a proper open-world role-playing game. That's why we're going to explore how one of the biggest video game developers, Bethesda Game Studios, could be secretly making their own Game of Thrones title. To start, we need to head back to before the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim was a thing, because as Bethesda Game Studios director and executive producer Todd Howard admitted in 2011, there was discussions with George R.R. Martin's team about Bethesda making a video game based on the franchise, or to be a little bit more specific, based on his books of A Song of Ice and Fire, and it seems like they were very serious at the time. Todd Howard's initial reaction back then was quote-unquote, "With A Song of Ice and Fire, we want to do that. People in our studio liked it, and it seeped into a bit of what we were doing." But he went on to clarify why they did not do it, saying quote-unquote, "We wanted to do our own world. That's where we wanted to put our time into. Before we were even making Skyrim, there was conversation with George R.R. Martin's people. They thought it would be a good match, and so did we. Actually, but then, we thought about if that was where we wanted to spend our time. It was tempting though." In 2011, Bethesda Game Studios would release what many consider one of the best role-playing games ever with the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Since then, Bethesda Game Studios produced Fallout 4 in 2015, the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition in 2016, and some other smaller things recently. In early 2016, Todd Howard revealed some pretty significant information on future Bethesda Game Studios titles, saying quote-unquote, "We are doing 3 long-term projects. We'll talk about them in the future. They are different from anything that we have done before, while also being a Bethesda-style game. Since then, we know that these 3 projects are completely new role-playing games, one of which will be the Elder Scrolls 6, although that game will come out last. So now to the other 2. It's been rumored that Bethesda's next game will be a space sci-fi RPG called Starfield, and that was found out through some trademark information that was submitted by their parent company ZeniMax. And right now it is being said that that will most likely come out in late 2018, although that is a rumor right now. But now that leaves us with that mysterious secret middle game, and there's really only a few possibilities of what it could be. It could be an Elder Scrolls spin-off, although I'm not sure that would make any sense, especially since most fans just want the Elder Scrolls 6 right now. It could be a Fallout spin-off, but some rumors have suggested that like the Elder Scrolls Online, which was developed by a different developer, the same could be happening to Fallout, as just a couple years ago Bethesda gained the rights to making a Fallout MMO. So this certainly leaves a big question mark about what this middle project is. But since Bethesda and George R.R. Martin's team discussed making a video game years ago, HBO's television series has dominated, and is probably the biggest thing on TV in years, although that certainly is a matter of opinion. HBO's Game of Thrones series is coming to an end very soon, but they will have some sort of prequel series coming down the road. Now, if Bethesda Game Studios were to make a Game of Thrones title, I think most of us would agree that we would like to see it move away from the current TV series. The prequel series that are currently in development have been confirmed to not touch on one massive event within Game of Thrones lore, and that is Robert's Rebellion, which I think could be the perfect scenario for Bethesda to tell that story within a video game. After years of making Fallout and Elder Scrolls games, Bethesda will be taking a break with a new franchise next. But the interesting question is, what comes afterwards? Looking at the comments that Todd Howard made years ago, and the potential that a Game of Thrones video game has right now, thanks to the popularity of the TV series, I think it's the perfect time for Bethesda to bring gamers a proper Game of Thrones role-playing game set before the TV series events. Whether that's Robert's Rebellion or Aegon's Conquest or anything within the franchise's rich history, I think most fans would appreciate it, if it's done right. Anyway guys, what do you think about this? Do you think Bethesda Game Studios could or should make a Game of Thrones video game? And if so, should it be based instead just on the books? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, but if you did enjoy this video or found any informative value, make sure to smack that like button, and consider subscribing to stay up to date on huge upcoming games like The Elder Scrolls 6, and I'll see you later.